Hi, Coach Alexander here again to talk to you about some of the things that are on the GMAT and what it's really about. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of how many sections and what's on what. You can go to the official website. You're all smart. You can do a couple of clicks. You could find it. What I can do as a coach with over 20 years of experience helping people get high scores and getting hundreds of people into top schools is give you the fastest and most efficient way to approach and to create your studies, and also to break some myths open. Now, the biggest mistake that people make is they just say, oh, well, it's a test of math and it's a test of English, and I'm going to study for these tests in very similar ways to which I studied and had had success with my academic career. And that's why I've seen a lot of people who are extremely good, who are very academically smart, have quite a bit of frustration. You have to remember that if this exam was just an ordinary exam for which you can prepare in a couple of weeks, it wouldn't mean much to top MBA schools who are trying to already choose from or among the crème de la crème of self-selected applicants who already know the requirements of the school. Okay? So, but there are some myths that we want to talk about. It really is not just math and English. In fact, let's talk about the English part. I've worked with people on all continents, not all, actually, yes, all continents, that's right. Or from all continents, because we do a lot of work over the internet and things like that and in person. And recently, in the last few years, the vast majority of my students have been international who speak English at an acceptable level. Now, with a good training program, as it turns out, as long as you're thinking about it correctly, most of them can get a higher score than even some of the better performing native English speakers. In fact, I would say that sometimes as a non-native English person, you may have an advantage if you train properly. If you go to a place or to a teacher who expects you to know every word of what you're reading, you're probably not doing yourself a service. Now, vocabulary is important and you should study vocabulary because there's power in communication and you're going to need it for your life. So if you can find a good vocabulary program, such as I do with some of my partners, you should do it. But when we're talking specifically about the GMAT, vocabulary study is not the way to go, and using English books as study is not the way to go. In fact, let me give you some quick ideas about how different countries performed on the GMAT. Now, keep in mind, these are averages and a lot of things are important, like how many people took the GMAT in that country. For example, if you may have a country but very few people took it, they were self-selected, they were more motivated, so that may have caused them to be a different, a different observational group and things like that. But overall, if you look at it, yes, some of the English-speaking countries are in the top, but for example, the United States is like 54th, okay? And in its average score, it's 532. This is official statistics from the GMAT. But they have over 90,000 people taking the test, which means there are some people who are not very motivated. But there are a few thousand people who are extremely motivated. And those are the people that you will be competing with for the top programs. Now, I give you another example. The Russian Federation kicks the crap out of the United States. They got a much higher score, a 553, so that's like more than 20 points higher. But they only had about 2,000 people take the test, meaning a lot fewer people take the test, so those people maybe had a different motivation. But the point is, in order to get a higher score, it's not the math alone that pulled them higher, because it's the balance of the two math and verbal section that combine to create a new curve. We don't need to go into all the details. You really don't need to understand how all this works. You need to train well. But we're giving you some ideas. Now, let's go up and look at the 9th place, China, with 53,000 people taking the exam, China, with an average score of 582 in the 9th place. Okay? Now, that's kind of surprising that so many people, although they have a population of, quite big, over 1 billion. So there's still self-selection, everything's proportional. But the idea is, if their English skills were that much poorer, they would not be able to compete. And the point is, everybody, or the majority of people who apply to these programs from wherever they are, they get a good score. So that's why I say very often that it's more interesting to teach an international student who is not, if you can correctly teach them not to do English, but to do GMAT, and this is the mistake that most people have, than anywhere else. By the way, very quickly, the top country with the highest average score, New Zealand. Go figure, but they only had 150 people take the test. And probably there's an extremely high level of self-selection. If you live all the way in New Zealand and you're going to do a top world MBA, boy, you better really make that as a chance. What other countries are at the top? Singapore, actually understandable. They have a very good educational system, plus English in a way is their operating language. Argentina ranks number 3 in the average GMAT score. After that, there's Austria, Belgium, and then you have some other countries, including Uruguay, which beats South Korea. Okay, so it's not a matter really of just English and math. And on this case, what I wanted to say is, you should not be intimidated by the verbal if you do the verbal correctly. But what they really do on this test is much more interesting than English and math. And that is something that we can talk about in one of our next videos. And also, there's a lot of great information you can find on our websites.